UCLA and USC are two of the four number one seeds in the NCAA women's basketball tournament. The other two number one seeds, South Carolina and Texas. First game for UCLA is Friday at Pauley Pavilion against UC San Diego or Southern University. They meet up Wednesday in a play-in game. Southern is one of two HBCU schools in the NCAA women's tournament. The other is Norfolk State. First game for USC is Saturday at noon at the Galen Center against North Carolina Greensboro. UCLA also has a team in the NCAA men's basketball tournament. The Bruins, a number 7 seed in the Midwest Regional, play Utah State Thursday night in Lexington, Kentucky. The Lakers snapped their 4-game losing streak Sunday. They beat Phoenix 106-97. The Clippers are 6-1 in their last 7 games after beating Charlotte 123-88, 31 points and 7 assists for James Harden. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson on KBLA Talk 1580.
KBLA Talk 1580 is pleased to announce that like George and Weezy,
well, we're moving on now.
Earlier this year, we were named as semifinalists for the American Climate Leadership Awards 2025. Wait for it. Wait for it.
You ready?
KBLA Talk 1580 was recently selected as one of 10 finalists being considered for this prestigious award. Hundreds of organizations, institutions, and even cities were nominated in the selection process. But KBLA Talk 1580 has made it to the finals. You're invited to watch live on Wednesday, April 16th at 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern, 12 p.m. Central, as Eco America announces the winner and the runner-up, awarding over $200,000 in prize money. To watch live, just go to ecoamerica.org to register and attend the online ceremony. That's ecoamerica.org. Don't miss the presentation of the American Climate Leadership Awards 2025, Wednesday, April 16th, and wish us luck. Caring about the climate, caring about the community, changing the conversation. We're KBLA Talk 1580, and we've got your black.
Guess who just got back today? Them wild-eyed boys that had been away haven't changed, had much to say. But man, I still think them cats are crazy. They were asking if you were around, how you was, where you could be found. Told them you were living downtown, driving all the old men crazy. The boys are back in town, boys are back in town.
I'm Tavis, Smiley. Delighted to have you with us in this third and final hour of our program today. What a show it's been already. And glad we made it to hour 3. This Chuck Schumer thing is just, I think it's just getting started. I was just saying to my producer in the studio, I am not sure that Chuck Schumer is going to survive this. People are mad, and I think he just underestimated. And we shall see what happens in the coming days. But I think he misread this one. But I digress on that for now. In this hour, given that it is, of course, St. Patrick's Day, a conversation with Human Rights First Senior Advisor Brian Dooley on his text, Black and Green, the fight for civil rights in Northern Ireland and Black America. Later in this hour, we'll be joined by the legendary Right Reverend Dr. Herbert Daughtry on his trip to Ireland decades ago as National Director of the Black United Front, where and when he also noted the striking similarities between the civil rights movement in the U.S. and in Northern Ireland. I suspect that some of Daughtry's observations we'll hear later on will no doubt remind us of what the great abolitionist Frederick Douglass had to say following the 4 months he spent in Ireland back in 1845, where upon leaving, Douglass said, and I quote, "I have undergone a transformation. I have undergone a transformation." That's what Douglass had to say upon leaving Ireland. And so we celebrate St. Patrick's Day our own way in this final hour. Brian Dooley, how are you, sir? Good to have you on this program.
Well, I'm great. Happy St. Patrick's Day, and thank you very much for inviting me on.
It's my great honor to have you on. Let me just start with this Frederick Douglass piece I mentioned a moment ago. Obviously, you know this stuff as well as anybody. When you think about Frederick Douglass, this great abolitionist, and his trip to Ireland, he spends 4 months there. You heard me quote him. He is transformed by this experience, this trip. What say you about the way that trip to Ireland impacted Frederick Douglass?
Oh, enormously. And he wasn't the first black abolitionist to go there. You know, a couple of years before he'd gone, Charles Lennox Redmond had also toured Ireland and amassed a huge petition signed by Irish people for abolition. But really, Frederick Douglass was the superstar. Now, he went in 45 and 46, which unfortunately, in terms of timing, was the first couple of years of the famine in Ireland, or what we call the Great Hunger and Gorta Mór. And so, although his visit had a huge impact, really it was sort of overtaken by the devastation of Ireland losing so many people in the famine. But he learned a lot from Ireland, and I think it's fair to say Ireland learned a lot from him too. He struck up a very strong personal and political connection with the leading Irish nationalist figure at the time, Daniel O'Connell, who really led the struggle in the 1840s. Again, the famine really cut everything apart, but Daniel O'Connell and Frederick Douglass were very close politically, and Daniel O'Connell really upset Irish America for with his calls for the abolition of slavery in the US. It's great to see in recent years now a much greater appreciation in Ireland of Frederick Douglass. When I wrote this book, it's 30 years ago, it wasn't exactly unknown that Douglass had gone to Ireland, but now it's much more appreciated. There's a plaque to his visit in Dublin. There's a big statue of Frederick Douglass now in Belfast, which is great to see, and it's just part of the common currency of the 1840s history now that Frederick Douglass went to Ireland, made a huge impact, really rallied much of the nation of Ireland against slavery in the US.
Your book, once again, is called Black and Green, The Fight for Civil Rights in Northern Ireland and Black America. Tell me more about this parallel of civil rights, the fight for civil rights in Northern Ireland, the fight for civil rights in Black America. Douglass notwithstanding, tell me more about this parallel, Brian Dooley, as you see it.
Well, let's take it in two halves. Let's oversimplify a bit.
Okay.
But from around the 1840s there, when Douglass goes, until around the 1920s, 1930s, the influence of one struggle on the other really went from east to west. I would say that the influence of the Irish struggle on the Black American struggle was pretty profound. You had Douglass going there, then in the early 1900s, Marcus Garvey, when he's founding his Black nationalist movement, really draws on the slogans, on the inspiration, on the history of the Irish struggle. He copies very deliberately for instance, the name of the newspaper, Our Own, which he sets up is a direct translation from the Irish political party Sinn Féin. He in the iconography of the green and the black and the red flag of Black nationalism, he says that black is for the people, the red is for the socialists of the world, and the green is for Ireland. And up until then, those 1910s, 1920s, Ireland has a big impact culturally on the Harlem Renaissance. Also, figures like Cyril Briggs, Claude Mackay took a lot of their strategic direction from the Irish struggle. But then after the Second World War, the 1950s, particularly the 1960s and 70s, the influence really washes across the other way from west to east. So before the Irish, the big conflict, violent conflict breaks out in the north of Ireland at the very end of the 1960s and early 70s, there was a short period where nationalist Catholics in Northern Ireland really tried to imitate the tactics of the Black American Civil Rights Movement. They took the songs, took the tactics, took the slogans. Much of the discrimination against Catholics in Northern Ireland during the 1960s was seen to be very close in its nature to the discrimination against African Americans.
Hold that thought 1 second, Brian Dooley. I want to talk about east to west and then west to east. I like the way you frame this. To your point, oversimplifying it in ways we can all follow. I get it. But this west to east thing is really fascinating for me when the struggle in Ireland starts to take on some of the design of the civil rights movement in this country, the fight for freedom in this country. We're doing St. Patrick's Day our own way, talking about Frederick Douglass and Marcus Garvey, and we'll be joined later by the Right Reverend Herbert Daughtry. What is it about Ireland that so enamors these African-American civil rights leaders with regard to their struggle for civil rights and our struggle for civil rights? You're listening to Brian Dooley on Tavis Smiley.
From Leimert Park with love, this is Tavis Smiley.
Texting privacy policy and terms and conditions posted at textplan.us. Texting enrolls for recurring automated text marketing messages. Message and data rates may apply. Reply stop, opt out. Individual results may vary. Consult a doctor prior to use.
You've lost so much weight. How'd you do it?
I got medical treatment for weight loss through Zelty and lost 50 pounds. I struggled for the longest time, but Zelty makes it easy and affordable to get weight loss treatment 100% online. Zelty providers can prescribe FDA-approved weight loss medications clinically shown to help people lose weight, like Wegovy, Zepbound, and others.
I've heard those medications can help you lose weight, but aren't they expensive?
Zelty can help get the medication covered by insurance, so it's as little as $0 a month.
What if you don't have insurance?
No problem. Zelty may be able to help you get other GLP-1 medications for 80 to 90% off the price of name brand medications.
I'm ready to start losing weight. How do I get started with Zelty?
Just text.
Text SUNNY to 200-300 to get started today with Zelty and see if weight loss medications like Wegovy and Zepbound are right for you. Don't wait. Text now for a link to your exclusive offer. Text SUNNY to 200-300. That's SUNNY to 200-300. SUNNY to 200-300.
Progressive's Auto Quote Explorer lets you easily compare direct rates from different insurance companies, so you can be confident you're getting the right one, even if it's not with Progressive. Way more confident than you were when you bought that TV in the parking lot. It just happened to not come in a box, or include a remote. And when you finally managed to turn it on, all it displayed was the menu of Grumpy's Tacos. So use Progressive's Auto Quote Explorer and be confident you're getting insurance that's right for you. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and affiliates. Not available in all states or situations. Prices vary based on how you buy.
Make a move into a home of your own. With City National Bank's Ladder Up Home Loan Grant, you could receive up to $20,000 that you never need to pay back. Use it toward your down payment, save on closing costs, or to buy down your mortgage rate. Find out more at cnb.com/ladderuphome. City National, here for every stage of the journey. Property must be in a qualifying market in California, New York, or New Jersey. Additional terms and conditions apply. Not all applicants will qualify. Terms are subject to change without notice. City National Bank is an equal housing lender. Member FDIC. NMLS number 536994.
If you're living with dry age-related macular degeneration or dry AMD, you may be at risk for developing geographic atrophy or GA. GA can be unpredictable and progress rapidly, leading to irreversible vision loss. Now there's something you can do to
slow it down and get it going slower.
Izervay is proven to slow GA progression.
Izervay gets GA going slower.
Izervay or avacincaptad pagel is a prescription eye injection used to treat GA. Don't take it if you have an infection or active swelling in or around your eye. Izervay can cause eye infection, retinal detachment, or increased risk of wet AMD. Izervay may temporarily increase eye pressure. Your vision may be impaired after an eye injection or exam. Don't delay. Ask your doctor about Izervay today.
Izervay gets GA going slower.
Visit Izervay.com. That's IZERVAY.com.
Sometimes he fails at fitting in, but we're okay with that. You're inside the Tavis Smiley Show.
You are indeed with Brian Dooley as we talk about his book, revisit his text, Black and Green, The Fight for Civil Rights in Northern Ireland and Black America. Of course, today is St. Patrick's Day. And again, delighted to be in conversation with Brian, who is Human Rights First Senior Advisor, talking about the connections between the struggle for freedom and civil rights and human rights in Ireland and the parallels to the struggle for freedom and civil rights and human rights here in America for black folk. And so, again, we're doing St. Patrick's Day our own way in this final hour of our program. So, Brian, back to the point you were making a moment ago, you talked about these two frames, the impact of protest east to west, and then the impact of protest west to east. Tell me more about the ways in which the struggles that black folk have been fighting for in this country have impacted the struggle for freedom and civil rights in Ireland.
Well, many parallels just in terms of the situation that certainly Catholics in Northern Ireland found themselves in the 1960s compared to the situation that many African Americans. So, for instance, the denial of voting rights. There's a fairly complicated system in Northern Ireland about who was allowed to vote. It meant by and large that not all votes were equal, and many Catholics just didn't have a vote at local elections because you needed to be a property owner. And this played out in all sorts of different ways. The consequences of that meant that Catholics, by and large, failed to just couldn't get access to public housing, to certain government jobs. And so their immediate identification was with what was happening and what had been happening, particularly in the southern states in the US. So in 1963, for instance, in a town in Ireland, Dungannon in Northern Ireland, people just couldn't get access to housing if they were Catholics because they just couldn't vote. They didn't have the political muscle to try and get public housing. And so you see photographs from that time of people are protesting about that, and they're holding placards saying, ship us back to Little Rock, and are we in Alabama? Right now, there was plenty people across the world being repressed in different contexts in 1963. I mean, who are much closer geographically to Northern Ireland. I mean, the whole Soviet Union was there, right? But it's interesting that it was looking westward across the Atlantic to the southern states, particularly of the US in the early 60s, where voting rights were denied. And that was the affiliation. That was the connection and the identification that people in Northern Ireland made. And fast forward just a few years, really, 1968 is where the big civil rights movements and marches happen in Northern Ireland. And immediately there, again, against discrimination, against second-class citizenship, and immediately people would identify themselves, call themselves, for instance, terms like Ulster's white Negroes, right? And the language, the slogans, the songs, the "We shall overcome," the "We shall not be moved." The activists of that time said they simply and very naturally took that from what they were seeing on TV, and of course an explosion in the number of people who owned TVs in the late 60s made all of that very accessible. And so huge influence there on the terms, but also the tactics. Very very simply, though. I mean, one of the leading civil rights activists from the time in Ireland, Bernadette Devlin, said, we saw what was happening in America in terms of the sit-ins. They sat down, so we sat down. I mean, it's as simple as that in terms of blocking the roads.
We mentioned Frederick Douglass earlier. We mentioned Marcus Garvey earlier in this conversation. I'll circle back to them in a moment here, but I want to raise the name of Martin Luther King Jr. of course, because as you're talking about the impact that our struggle for civil and human rights had in this country, the impact we had on the struggle in Ireland. You're in the 60s now, so we're in the King era now. We're past Frederick Douglass, we're past Marcus Garvey. We're in the King era. And I am curious as to how King's notion of nonviolence resonated. You've been very good. You've been very good detailing for us the ways in which our movement impacted the struggle for freedom in Northern Ireland, our songs, our slogans, et cetera, et cetera. But to this issue of nonviolence that King advanced in this country, how did that play or not play in Ireland?
Well, there was a serious and popular attempt really in 68, 69, and into the early 70s to some extent in Northern Ireland to adopt the tactics and the philosophy also to some extent of Dr. King. But really violence won in that the peaceful civil rights movement really couldn't sustain or couldn't produce the reform that was needed. And so they were the early peaceful civil rights marches from 68, 69, 70 were attacked violently by the Northern Ireland police. And by 1972, again, some of this terminology would be familiar, right? By 1972, in January, when civil rights protesters were killed by British soldiers on the streets of Derry on the Northern Ireland version of Bloody Sunday, right? Which came 7 years after the Selma version. That is sort of taken as the end, really, of the effectiveness of the non-violent civil rights movement in Northern Ireland. But it had great attraction, of course, for people because it was simply less painful and less costly, but it couldn't produce the results. And if I can just jump back 10 years there to 1955, again, to oversimplify, that's often taken as the date of the modern American civil rights movement, the Montgomery bus boycott, and just a reminder that the term boycott, the tactic was created and developed in Ireland in the 1880s. Right? Irish people invented the boycott when farmers refused to pay the land agent, Captain Boycott, the money and that he wanted from them, and they socially ostracized him and his staff. And this was an early expression of non-violent protest that started in Ireland. In fact, there was a bus boycott in the 1920s in Belfast because Catholics thought they weren't getting job opportunities. Then came used very effectively, of course, in the US in the 50s, but then by the 60s, yes, the influence really is on the Irish movement from the American movement. So, for instance, in early 1969, civil rights marches had been banned in Northern Ireland, and so the activists deliberately took a page from the American experience and went on a march, the Selma to Montgomery version of a march, which went from Belfast to Derry, and which in itself then was also a turning point in the history of the civil rights movement in Northern Ireland, as it had been in America when people very violently attacked that march. So those parallels were there. I think naturally, I don't think they were forced, right from at least the 1840s up to the 60s and 70s.
This is fascinating stuff for me. When we think about St. Patrick's Day, we don't think about the parallels, the impact that our movement had, the Black American movement for civil rights had in Ireland, nor do we think about the impact that the fight for freedom in Ireland has had on us. But that's where Frederick Douglass and Marcus Garvey re-enter this story. When you think about Douglass, you think about Garvey, broadly speaking, what were they seeing? What were they experiencing? What were they connecting with regard to the struggle for freedom there that they wanted to uplift, to acknowledge, to latch onto with regard to our struggle over here?
I think that there are two different things. I would say the influence of Ireland on Frederick Douglass, for instance, was different than the influence 50 or 60 or so years later on Marcus Garvey, and also those around the Harlem Renaissance, because some of those big players of Marcus Garvey and Cyril Briggs and Claude Mackay, they were from the Caribbean originally.
Right.
And I think that matters because their connection, their identification with Ireland was of people who were part of the British Empire. And so they saw in the Irish struggle a resistance to British colonialism. Now, that wasn't the experience of Frederick Douglass and some of the others who were not living by that time under British rule. So I think the attraction for Douglass and some of the other abolitionists, well, there are a couple of things. The first was that there were influential people in Ireland. I mean, first and foremost, Daniel O'Connell, the Irish nationalist leader, who was prepared to tell Irish America to stop with the racism, to stop with the segregation, to stop with the apologies for slavery. And I think that was just useful in terms of support. The other thing then, which I think was also useful, was just how O'Connell and then some others after him modeled a mass agitation movement, a mass non-violent protest movement. I should also say that not all of this history is great. from the Irish side, right? There were also some leading Irish nationalist revolutionaries, thinking here of a guy called John Mitchell, big heroes in Ireland in the 1880s or so. But John Mitchell went to in the 1860s. Sorry, John Mitchell went to the US. He ran a couple of horrible, racist, segregationist Confederate newspapers in Richmond. He'd been sent to Australia by the British as a punishment. He escaped and got to Virginia. And so it's not all super rosy, right? And when we come to talk about Irish America too, there's a very mixed picture there in terms of how Irish America in those 1960s and 70s also responded to the civil rights movement in the U.S.
Yep. So, as you well know, here in this country, in the era of Donald Trump 2.0, he is attempting to turn back the clock on so much of the progress that was made during the civil rights era and our struggle for freedom, justice, and equality in this country. That's what's happening here as we're talking about these parallels between Northern Ireland and your fight and Black America and our fight. What's happening there now? As I said, Donald Trump here determined to turn back the clock on everything he can in real time. What's happening in Ireland as we speak with regard to these civil and human rights issues?
Well, thanks very much. I'm very pleased you asked me that. Ireland is still, certainly Northern Ireland is still locked in a sense psychologically in what happened when the civil rights movement really failed to deliver the reforms, or the government failed to deliver the reforms the civil rights movement had been asking for in the late 60s and early 70s, and as you know, descended in terrible decades of violence, which didn't end until 98. The British government, people of Ireland, are still trying to come to terms really with what happened then, and there has been some terrible attempts by successive British governments to try to hide crimes which their security forces, their police and soldiers were guilty of during the 70s, 80s and 90s. There was an attempt a couple of years ago to try to give amnesty, like total official impunity to British soldiers and British police and others who had killed people. And so that community, by and large, a Catholic nationalist community, which were struggling for votes in the 60s and 70s, and now has voting rights and all of this. There's a much greater sense of equality now. But some of the old problems are still there. The security forces are still overwhelmingly Protestant, although there's been some reform. But getting justice for hundreds of people who were killed, many more people who were tortured during those years, the British government really is not interested in providing that sort of accountability.
No, that's the key, right? Accountability, and we're fighting that fight here now, as are you in Ireland. We're revisiting the text from Brian Dooley called "Black and Green: The Fight for Civil Rights in Northern Ireland and Black America." Why? Because today is St. Patrick's Day, and I want to make sure that you are fully aware of the way that our struggle here in the U.S. For freedom and justice and equality as Black folk parallels and in some ways mirrors the struggle for freedom, justice, and equality in Northern Ireland. We talked about Frederick Douglass. We talked about Marcus Garvey. We talked about MLK. When we come forward, we'll be joined by the legendary Right Reverend Dr. Herbert Daughtry, who will tell us in his own words about his trip to Ireland decades ago as National Director of the Black United Front. And I suspect you're going to hear that he found as well some striking similarities between our civil rights movement and their civil rights movement. We'll do that when we come forward alongside Brian Dooley on Tavis Smiley.
Helping to stretch your moral and political imagination. This is Tavis Smiley.
Robinhood Gold members can now enjoy the VIP treatment, receiving a 3% IRA match on annual retirement contributions. With Robinhood Gold, the perks of the high net worth are now available for any net worth. The new gold standard is here with Robinhood Gold. To receive a 3% boost on annual IRA contributions, sign up at Robinhood.com/gold. Investing involves risk. 3% match requires Robinhood Gold $5 a month for 1 year from first match. Must keep funds in IRA for 5 years. Go to Robinhood.com/boost. Robinhood Financial LLC member SIPC. Gold membership is offered by Robinhood Gold LLC. Jersey.
I'm Bree Wood with 4 things you should know with BIN News. Powerful storms in the South and Midwest have caused over 3 dozen deaths, with most fatalities in Missouri, which has a black population of just over 11%. The severe weather also affected Arkansas, Texas, Oklahoma, Kansas, Alabama, and Mississippi this weekend. Canadian Ambassador Kirsten Hillman insists the U.S. and Canada remain close allies despite trade disagreements. She expects announcements impacting Trump's planned tariffs on Canada and emphasized productive trade meetings. A federal judge in Boston has ordered a hearing today to address why Dr. Rasha Alawiya was deported to Lebanon despite having a valid visa and a court date blocking her removal. Dr. Alawiya is a medical professor at Brown University. And the college basketball playoffs could lead to $20 billion in lost productivity for the U.S. economy, according to Action Network. 40% of respondents calling in sick to watch games contribute to this loss. Get BIN News on demand 24/7 on the iHeartRadio app.
The Crohn's and Colitis Foundation has been at the forefront of inflammatory bowel disease research and care for over 50 years. Learn more about research, education, and support at Crohn'sColitisFoundation.org.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
UCLA and USC are 2 of the 4 number 1 seeds in the NCAA women's basketball tournament. The other 2 number 1 seeds, South Carolina and Texas. First game for UCLA is Friday at Pauley Pavilion against UC San Diego or Southern University. They meet up Wednesday in a play-in game. Southern is one of 2 HBCU schools in the NCAA women's tournament. The other is Norfolk State. First game for USC is Saturday at noon at the Galen Center against North Carolina Greensboro. UCLA also has a team in the NCAA men's basketball tournament. The Bruins, a number 7 seed in the Midwest Regional, play Utah State Thursday night in Lexington, Kentucky. The Lakers snapped their 4-game losing streak Sunday. They beat Phoenix 106-97. The Clippers are 6-1 in their last 7 games after beating Charlotte 123-88, 31 points and 7 assists for James Harden. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson on KBLA Talk 1580.
We've got a lot to talk about.
On January 7th, 2025, the Eaton Canyon Fire scorched Altadena, torching everything in its path. Homes, wealth, and legacy burned in one night. But will Altadena rise from the ashes? I'm James Farr. On the Conversation Live Altadena Rising, we're chronicling the recovery, the resilience, and justice for the nation. This is the show of record. Unapologetically progressive. We're not blacking down. So join me, James Farr, on the Conversation Live Altadena Rising every Saturday at 10 a.m. Pacific with the rebroadcast on Sunday at noon.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black.
Texting enrolls you into reoccurring automated text messages. Consent not required to purchase. Message and data rates may apply.
Hey, Dan, how you doing? Haven't seen you around the gym for a while.
Yeah, I've really fallen off. Since I turned 40, I just don't get the results I used to get.
Could be lower testosterone.
Lower T?
Yeah, I went through it a while back. Once you hit 40, your body has less free testosterone. I got Nugenix Total T, and it's made a huge difference for me.
I've seen that ad on TV. Is it for real?
Oh, yeah. The key ingredient is something called Tesnor, which helps boost free and total testosterone levels to help you trim up and stay lean.
And it's made a difference for you?
Man, I feel like I'm in my 20s again. At work, in the gym, and in the bedroom.
Are they still giving out complimentary bottles for people to try it for themselves?
Yeah, you just need to send them a text.
Text ROCK to 42424 right now for your complimentary bottle of Nugenix Total T, the #1 selling testosterone booster at GNC. Plus, text now and we'll include a bottle of Nugenix Thermo, our most powerful fat incinerator ever, to help you get back into shape fast. Absolutely free. Text ROCK to 42424. That's ROCK to 42424.
Stories are power. The Black Land Lost Narrative Archive Project is an effort to collect, preserve, and amplify stories of Black land loss. It will form an invaluable resource for scholars, authors, historians, educators, storytellers, policymakers, and change agents who wrestle with issues of restitution, reparations, racial inequality in home ownership, and the racial wealth gap. Through documenting stories of Black land loss, the archive will help demonstrate the magnitude of what Black families have lost and will continue the national dialogue to encourage paths to restitution, rebuilding, and healing. Support the Black Land Lost Narrative Archive Project by visiting www.blacklandlost.org or by donating at www.blacklandlost.org/donate. Spread the word to inspire awareness, activism, leadership, and change. And join us in making a lasting impact. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black. Freedom is an endless meeting. So let's get back to it with Tavis Smiley.
It is St. Patrick's Day, and we are celebrating in our own way by trying to bring to light the impact that our struggle as black folk in this country, our struggle for freedom and civil rights and justice and equality, the impact we've had on the good folk in Ireland, as well as the impact their struggle in Northern Ireland has had on our struggle in this country. It has moved east to west and then west to east, as Brian Dooley laid out for us quite nicely earlier in this conversation. In case you've just tuned in, Brian Dooley is Human Rights First Senior Advisor and author of the book Black and Green, The Fight for Civil Rights in Northern Ireland and Black America. It's been fascinating for the first half hour of this final hour today to hear him talk about, again, that east to west movement, that west to east movement in terms of how we impact each other's struggles. In case you've just tuned in, we've talked about Frederick Douglass, who, of course, spent 4 months in Ireland back in 1845, 1846, whereupon leaving, Douglass said, and I quote, "I have undergone a transformation." Ireland had a huge impact on Frederick Douglass. He came back here and got busier in his work, of course, as an abolitionist. So we've been talking about the ways in which Ireland impacted Frederick Douglass. We've talked about the ways in which the struggle for freedom in Northern Ireland impacted Marcus Garvey. And I was able to ask Brian Dooley, again, in case you've just tuned in, how King's leadership in the 60s impacted their struggle there in Northern Ireland. And if I can paraphrase it, they tried the nonviolent thing for a while. It didn't quite work as well for them as it did for us. And that sort of got abandoned, and that movement became much more violent than anybody wanted it to be in Northern Ireland, that is. But just trying to gauge the impact of our struggle on them, their struggle on us. Once again, the book is called Black and Green, The Fight for Civil Rights in Northern Ireland and Black America, here on St. Patrick's Day. Even St. Patty's Day, there's always a black angle. I don't care what it is. There is a black angle to everything, and we're making that connection today. So there's Frederick Douglass, there's Marcus Garvey, there's MLK, there are others, and then there's the legendary Right Reverend Dr. Herbert Daughtry, who went to Ireland decades ago as National Director of the Black United Front, where and when he also noted some striking similarities between the civil rights movement in this country and in Northern Ireland. I am delighted to welcome Reverend Daughtry to this program. Doc, how are you today, sir?
Oh, man, I'm super. I'm even super now that I'm talking to you.
Super. For starters, I love you, and there ain't nothing you can do about it. I respect you. I was just thinking before you came on about one of the moments, one of the great nights of my life. I happened to be in your church. Cornell West, our dear friend and brother, was lecturing. I was with him, and we had a time that night. I think I can say we had a Holy Ghost good time that night. In your
oh man, I tell you, I got a beautiful shot with you and Cornell, Dr. West, and I together, and maybe I'll try to send it to you, so give it to you some kind of way.
That was
I treasure it.
No, I'm glad you have that photo. I'm glad you treasure it. I treasure that night with you and Dr. West, and I'm honored to have you on this program. Let me make the most of the time that we have. My time is getting tired of me. Tell me about this. I'm going to ask it broadly, so you can go anywhere you want to go. Tell me about your trip to Ireland as National Director of the Black United Front as a black man, and what you saw, what you experienced on your trip.
I was invited in 1981 as a member of delegation, and at the same time, I was invited to the GDR, gone from here, the German Democratic Republic. I had read of the connection between Irish strugglers and people of African ancestry, leadership struggles, as you just touched upon, Fred Douglass, and then and on Marcus Garvey, and on this side, I remember Bernadette Devon, young Irish leader, about 20, 21 years old, who'd come to the country in 1969, and visited Chicago, where Mayor Daley gave her an award, and she gave it to the Black Panther Party. She visited New York. Mayor Lindsay gave her the key to the city, which she returned to Ireland, and gave the key to the Harlem chapter of the Black United Front. I recommend it. And so there were many other strugglers, Irish strugglers, that we saw the connection in our struggle. I was invited, in 1981, German Democratic Republic. At the same time, I was invited to Belfast. So I went up to the GDR first. And then after being there about a week or so, I came back. I then journeyed back to Belfast or Ireland. It was interesting that when I landed in London to change planes, the British are there checking my passport and everything, noting that I was going up to Belfast, and he said to me, "Are you a minister?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Some people say I am." And he said, "You going up there to convert them, are you?" And he said it with such disgust, them. And it's kind of disheartened me for a while, because I'm usually the them. How did I get to be on the side and call me the them, to call some other people the them, and they all look alike. They're all white. So in any event, I went up to Belfast, and met with the Irish leaders. We had formed a kind of coalition, particularly around South Africa, Free Mandela, the struggle. And so when I went up, I visited the Irish leaders and the grave sites. They were on a hunger strike, you remember, at the time, starving themselves. In fact, I had done a memorial for Bobby Sands, one of the leaders, and who I think was the first to die from hunger. And so we visited grave sites and attended the meetings and visited the communities. What was interesting is that Sinclair Bowen, the eminent filmmaker, asked me to stay on, that he wanted to complete the film, The Black and the Green. So I told him, okay, all right, I'll stay with you. And so we visited. I got a chance to visit those communities, Turf Lodge, Ballymurphy, which reminded me of East New York and other inner cities across America.
Hold that thought when we come forward. Reverend Doctor, hold that thought. When we come forward, I want to just probe that a little bit further before my time's getting tired of me. I want to probe a little further what those similarities were. You're starting to get to that part now. And I want to probe what those striking similarities were that you saw between their struggle for freedom and justice and our struggle here for freedom and justice. You're hearing firsthand the account of Reverend Herbert Daughtry, our friend and brother, right here, right now on Tavis Smiley.
From California to the Carolinas, everybody's listening to Tavis. More when we come forward.
This is an ad by BetterHelp. Think about your mentors and idols, the people who inspire you the most. While it may look like they have all the answers, they don't. But they do know when to ask questions and seek the support they need. In a world that glorifies hyper-independence, it's easy to forget that we're all better with a support system. Therapy is a great way to find a consistent source of support in your life, so you can break free from the outdated belief that seeking help is a sign of weakness. BetterHelp has experienced therapists ready to help you with challenges ranging from anxiety and depression to relationships and stress. It's convenient, too. You can join a session with the click of a button, helping you fit therapy into your busy life. You can even send your therapist a message anytime something comes up. Build your support system with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/ABCRadio today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/ABCRadio.
The revolution will not be televised.
What's up? It is Killer Mike, also known as Michael Render, and I'm encouraging you to listen to more, not less, of Truth Time with Dr. Cornel West and Senator Nina Turner on KBLA Talk 1580.
We ask seniors how to prevent Medicare scams.
My best advice, if you get a phone call, do not talk to the person. These people are well trained. Don't talk to them.
They don't know me. They're just trying to scam me.
Don't be fooled. Hang up. Just hang up.
Never give out your Medicare number.
They're going to get your number to put in a false claim.
If I get a call from someone, I don't pick up the phone. And should I pick up the phone and they ask for information, then I hang up.
How do you detect Medicare fraud?
Just like I check my credit card statements, I check my Medicare statements monthly.
Scammers can get a hold of your number, order medical devices through your account, and you're not even going to know about it if you don't look at your statement.
Check your statement every month.
If you get your statement and you see something that you know you did not have done, you report it.
Call your Senior Medicare Patrol.
To report Medicare fraud, call the Senior Medicare Patrol at 855-613-7080.
Texting privacy policy and terms and conditions posted at textplan.us. Texting enrolls for recurring automated text marketing messages. Message and data rates may apply. Reply stop, opt out. Individual results may vary. Consult a doctor prior to use.
If you've struggled to lose weight in the past, this important message is for you because you could lose as much as 50 pounds or more with Zelfie. Zelfie makes it easy and affordable to get weight loss treatment 100% online. Zelfie providers can prescribe FDA-approved GLP-1 weight loss medications clinically shown to help people lose weight like Wegovy, Zepbound, and others. Plus, help get the medication covered by insurance so it's as little as $0 a month.
The doctors are super helpful, and the meds have been a game changer. It's the first program I've had success with.
Before Zelfie, I was unable to lose weight, even though I was eating healthy and exercising 6 days a week. Zelfie helped me not only lose weight, but I feel so much better.
Text GOAL to 200-300 to get started today with Zelfie and see if weight loss medications like Wegovy or Zepbound are right for you. Don't wait. Text now for a link to your exclusive offer. Text GOAL to 200-300. That's GOAL to 200-300. GOAL to 200-300.
Sometimes he fails at fitting in, but we're okay with that. You're inside the Tavis Smiley Show.
You are indeed with Brian Dooley, who is Senior Advisor to Human Rights First, author of the book Black and Green, The Fight for Civil Rights in Northern Ireland and Black America. Also joined by the legendary clergyman, the Right Reverend Dr. Herbert Daughtry, talking about his trip to Ireland decades ago as National Director of the Black United Front, given that today is St. Patrick's Day, trying to weave these two things together. Before I get back to Reverend Daughtry, Brian, I want to come to you right quick, and I want to just read something from one of our listeners. As I mentioned, I got a really bright audience here, and this is worth, I think, hearing, and I want to get your take on it right quick. Tavis, lest one over-romanticize the sympathies between historical black figures and the Emerald Isle, it bears remembering that Irish immigrants fleeing from the potato famine in their country initially formed allegiances with black citizens of the U.S., but were persuasively, if not forcibly, dissuaded from these alliances by the political and economic powers that be in the northeastern urban U.S., particularly in regard to unionizing efforts to improve employment conditions and wages. Irish immigrants would thus go on to swell the ranks of police forces in cities like New York and Chicago that would be responsible for some of the most vicious persecution of black citizens in the early 20th century. It's a powerful point. We don't want to over-romanticize this relationship, Brian. What say you about that comment from one of our listeners?
Absolutely true. And it wasn't just in the early 19th century either. I mean, you see, Mayor Daley in the 1960s, Irish-American figure. You see Bull Connor in the 1960s. You see the top police and right through the ranks of the police in New York and Boston and Chicago having a very racist reputation. And that's there for a reason. So it's a very mixed picture. Like I said, there were also people, Irish nationalists who were on the right side of this and the wrong side of this. And I'd also like to say, if I can take the opportunity,
Sure.
that the Reverend Daughtry's trip to Belfast in 1981 is still spoken about there. People still remember it because the solidarity of that trip and the sense of Irish solidarity in these struggles is very highly valued in Ireland. And we're speaking today, obviously, about the connection with the African American struggle, but also nowadays you see right across the Catholic communities in Ireland, Palestinian flags, for instance. They understand the value and the importance of solidarity. Also, particularly in the south of Ireland, the solidarity and the empathy with Ukraine, where I do a lot of my work now for Human Rights First. So Ireland also has this mentality, I think, of looking outwards to share their own experiences, but also to draw in the experiences of other struggles, and which they put to great use, copying, as we've said, and identifying with the Black American struggle.
I am not at all surprised to hear that the trip by Reverend Daughtry to Belfast in the 80s is still being talked about. That's who he is. Everywhere he goes, he has an impact. He leaves an impression. You heard me say moments ago that I'm still talking about all these years later, the time I spent with he and Dr. West at his church there in New York. So he leaves an impact, but that's who he is. Speaking of Reverend Daughtry, when we come forward, I'll give him the last word. I am anxious as to those similarities that he saw when he visited Ireland in the 80s between their struggle and our struggle. That's how we'll close this hour with Reverend Herbert Daughtry when we come forward on Tavis Smiley.
This is getting good. Yeah, man. Tavis Smiley continues when we come forward.
Progressive's Auto Quote Explorer lets you easily compare direct rates from different insurance companies, so you can be confident you're getting the right one, even if it's not with Progressive. Way more confident than you were when you bought that TV in a parking lot. It just happened to not come in a box or include a remote. And when you finally managed to turn it on, all it displayed was the menu of Grumpy's Tacos. So use Progressive's Auto Quote Explorer and be confident you're getting insurance that's right for you. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and affiliates. Not available in all states or situations. Prices vary based on how you buy.
If you're like me, 60 and retired, making ends meet, especially here at the supermarket and drugstore, is tough. I'm so blessed to have found benefitscheckup.org. It's a free and confidential website from the National Council on Aging that connected me to $1,200 a year in programs that help pay for food, medicine, utilities, and more. Maybe it can help you. benefitscheckup.org.
You know where you want to go in life, and City National Bank can help. City National knows the dedication it takes to build your vision for the future into a reality, and our team is here for you. We have a wide range of options to help, from personal savings accounts to interest-bearing money market savings accounts and more, all designed to help you get where you want to go. City National, here for every stage of the journey. Learn more at cnb.com. City National Bank is a subsidiary of Royal Bank of Canada, member FDIC.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580, connecting you with services and solutions. Worried about eviction? You have rights, and Stay Housed LA can help. Stay Housed LA is a partnership between LA County, the City of Los Angeles, and local service providers. From Lancaster to Long Beach, we're here to help you with tenant education workshops, legal clinics, free legal services for eligible tenants, and online resources about tenant protection laws. Don't face eviction alone. Call our hotline at 1-888-694-0040. That's 1-888-694-0040. Or visit stayhousedla.org. Stay Housed LA, keeping Los Angeles residents in their homes. Stay Housed LA, your rights, your home, our community. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
Hear that? That's the sound of your life. Perfectly imperfect. Beating in rhythm to the world you've created. But every time you drive after drinking, the music gets drowned out. Your life sounds pretty great. Don't let a buzz ruin it. Buzz driving is drunk driving. Don't drive buzzed. A message from NHTSA and the Ad Council.
He's a paradigm pioneer. and the top-rated African-American talk show host in the nation, according to Talkers Magazine. You're tapped in with Tavis Smiley right now.
Tavis Smiley and Brian Dooley, author of the book Black and Green, The Fight for Civil Rights in Northern Ireland and Black America, and the Right Reverend Dr. Herbert Daughtry is our guest. I've got just a few minutes left. I want to give it to him. As one of our listeners said, we don't want to over-romanticize this relationship. These lessons learned from them and from us as we engage in our fight for freedom. But I'm curious, in these last 3 minutes, Reverend Daughtry, what you saw in terms of the similarities between their struggle and ours when you went to Ireland back in the 80s.
Well, let me say that I had occasion to sit in the headquarters of Sinn Féin, the political struggle. And I interviewed this young struggler who was on hunger strike. And I said to him precisely what this writer had written. I said, man, listen, I've never been treated better in Belfast. We connect our struggle. But, man, in the USA, some of the most vicious, some of the most vicious police officers were Irish. I hate to say it.
Yeah.
And so what do you say when I get back home and people raise these questions? You tell my Irish friends that if they can't support the black struggle, they don't have to support our struggle. You know, so that is, in fact, it was in the film, The Black and the Green, but it's no longer there. So the recognition that there was these kinds of conflicts. But the similarities, as I mentioned, was cultural in the sense that the British, this officer, when I was changing grades, kind of represented the mentality. Them, and it was economic. It was the oppression. I mentioned a couple of communities, Turf Lodge, Ballymurphy. It was civil rights, but as you pointed out and as others pointed out, that they tried nonviolent civil rights,
that's right.
And all that, but they found that they didn't make too much progress. So for me, it was encouragement to continue the connection, continue the struggle. That I coined the phrase, save the planet, save the people. Save the planet, save the people. And strugglers everywhere who believe that wanting to save the planet, save this earth, and at the same time, save the people.
That's it.
I traveled back with a young lad. He must have been about 12 or 13 on the same plane. We were seated next to each other. He was going to Staten Island, and memorable, just a nice young man. And I wondered what he was going to be when he got to the USA, if he was going to change and become the regret, racist, oppressive, brutal part of Irish connection, or was he going to become the progressive, humane, for freedom?
No, that's a powerful question, and every one of us has agency to answer that question as we will. And I hope that he became the latter, to your point, Reverend Daughtry, and not the former. I am out of time. I want to thank my friend Reverend Daughtry, Herbert Daughtry. By the way, if that name sounds familiar, you've heard his daughter on this program before, Leah Daughtry. This is the sister that ran a couple of Democratic conventions, ran them beautifully. So from time to time, you hear his daughter, Bishop Leah Daughtry, on this program. So the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. So I just want to mention Leah, just an amazing sister. But you see where Leah got it from. Her brilliant father, Reverend Herbert Daughtry, I've been honored to have on this program. And Brian Dooley, author of the book Black and Green, The Fight for Civil Rights in Northern Ireland and Black America. That's how you do St. Patty's Day our way. Back here tomorrow, Lord willing, to do it all over again. Until tomorrow, thanks for listening to Tavis Smiley, and as always, keep the faith.
KBLA 1580 Santa Monica.
I'm Bree Wood with 4 things you should know with BIN News. Powerful storms in the South and Midwest have caused over 3 dozen deaths, with most fatalities in Missouri, which has a black population of just over 11%. The severe weather also affected Arkansas, Texas, Oklahoma, Kansas, Alabama, and Mississippi this weekend. Canadian Ambassador Kirsten Hillman insists the U.S. and Canada remain close allies despite trade disagreements. She expects announcements impacting Trump's planned tariffs on Canada and emphasized productive trade meetings. A federal judge in